Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, theFellowKGB. You can follow me on Twitter at theFellowKGB. And it is Monday night. We got a really fun game between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Los Angeles Rams. Both teams are in the wild card race in the NFC right now. Both have really good defenses, a lot of fantasy players on both sides. So that's going to be something exciting to watch tonight. But for this video, I think Monday nights going forward are going to be my nights to kind of just hang out and just kind of review the news and the notes that came out from today and yesterday's games. We'll look at some of the injury stuff going on. We'll kind of look at some of my ideas and thoughts that I have on the waiver wire for the waiver wire runs tomorrow night. So we'll do our waiver wire show tomorrow evening. But this is kind of just a relaxed version of just a Monday night hangout. We'll just kind of look at some of the news and notes, and we'll just kind of hang out and answer questions, whatever you guys need. But for now, I'm going to hop into a screen share here on the fantasyfellowship.com. I do have the waiver wire report already kind of entered. I think I'm going to spend probably the morning tomorrow and just kind of tinkering and updating things before I send it out. But it's pretty much all good to go. I do have my YouTube schedule on here for the rest of the week. It's a little bit of a weird week with Thanksgiving. I don't know what time I'm going to be doing it Thursday and Friday. But for sure, tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, we'll do our waiver wire run. And then just looking at the top of the list here, I did call out some really important injuries to monitor here. We know Kyler Murray was kind of dinged up against the Seahawks last Thursday Night Football. He had a little bit of a shoulder thing going on. So I think he's probable to play, but just something to keep an eye on there. Joe Burrow, of course, it was sad to see the season-ending knee injury. I mean, if you're in Superflex leagues, we'll probably look at Ryan Finley at some point here. Definitely tomorrow night, we'll talk a little bit more about him. Drew Brees, I'm really not really sure if we're going to see him anymore this season at all. He has 11 ribs that are broken on, I don't know what side it is, but you have 24 total ribs. So basically half of his ribs were either broken, cracked, or whatever was going on. So unfortunate for that. But Taysom Hill paid off really well for us. It looks like Taysom Hill can be for sure, he's going to be a quarterback too in Superflex leagues going forward. He's not going to be tight end eligible on ESPN or any other platforms anymore. So it looks like if you want to use him, you're going to have to use him as a quarterback 1 or a quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. Teddy Bridgewater, everyone thought he was going to play yesterday, but I guess they just were cautious. Detroit, I mean, they didn't really need Teddy Bridgewater against Detroit, so this is probably the best move in hindsight here. But PJ Walker looked pretty good. We'll see if Teddy Bridgewater can practice thoroughly this week, so we'll monitor his practice reports. You got Gardner Minshew as bad. I mean, Jacksonville got waxed, to Pittsburgh, which was kind of predictable. But Jake Luton ended up throwing 4 interceptions. I think he only had like 150 passing yards as well. So it was a really rough day for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Maybe we see Gardner Minshew enter the lineup again now that we kind of know what Jake Luton can do and what he brings to the offense here. So this is definitely something I'm keeping my eye on. In Superflex leagues for sure, Jacksonville does have a lot of pass catchers that we like. So we'll keep an eye on Minshew. Sam Darnold has a chance to play this weekend. He has a right shoulder sprain as well. Joe Flacco's been playing pretty good. This offense has been playing pretty good as a whole too. They've actually been scoring more points. I think in the last 2 games, they've scored almost more points than they have in the rest of the season. So the offense with all their healthy receivers is actually looking like an asset right now. Since we're talking about the Jets, we did see the rookie running back, LaMichael Piron. He left with a high ankle sprain. So we'll probably talk about some of the running backs on the waiver wire tomorrow night as well. But a lot of injuries here. We don't know if we're going to see Christian McCaffrey this week. It would make sense for him to be held out and just wait till after the bye on week 13. So we're probably not going to see McCaffrey and maybe Mixon back until week 14. But now that we got Joe Burrow and Cincinnati's season just basically, I mean, it already was kind of down the drain, but we don't know if we're going to see Mixon anymore this year either. So a lot of injuries and news and notes to get to there. So if you want to check that out. The other one that I did want to call out here was Greg Olsen with the plantar fascia. He's on IR. We might not see Greg Olsen again this year. So if you're looking, I mean, a lot of people need tight ends. If you don't have Kelsey or Waller or Andrews, maybe Goddard even, you might need a tight end. So we'll see if Will Dissly or maybe Jacob Hollister could be the guys for us there. So if you are interested in checking out the waiver wire report, I do have a really good jump start on it this week. I call out my streaming options ranked for quarterbacks, and then I list some super flex options to keep in mind of, and then I do list the guys that should be owned. But then, I don't know, everything's kind of filled out there. We'll review this a little bit more in depth tomorrow, but if you want to take a peek at that, you can definitely check it out on the fantasyfellowship.com. I think next I'm going to pivot to, I was looking at the Roto World news. I think there's some notable things in here that we should call out and just be aware of for this week. We got 3 games on Thanksgiving, so we'll probably look at the practice reports as well for the teams that are playing on Thursday. We'll get to some Baltimore news in a little bit here, but we'll just kind of call out some of the important news here for fantasy football. Vikings receiver Adam Thielen was placed on the reserve COVID list. I'm not sure if he was a close contact or if he actually has COVID, but this is definitely something to keep an eye on. They play on Sunday. I can't remember who they play. We'll have to look at that in a bit. But the Vikings, I think it looks like they're going up against the Panthers. So we'll see if Adam Thielen can go. We'll monitor his reports. Maybe by Friday, if we get a practice by Friday from Adam Thielen, that'll be good. But sometimes they do activate players on Saturday too. So we'll hope. We'll leave a light on for Adam Thielen to play for us this weekend. He just had a really great game against Dallas. So hopefully we can get him going up against the Carolina Panthers. Like I said earlier, the Michael Pirine, he was off to a really good start too. I think he had like 8 carries, 33 yards, and a touchdown. And then he gets this high ankle sprain, and then they have to go to Frank Gore and Ty Johnson. So we'll see a lot of Frank Gore, I think, going forward the next week or two. So if you're desperate and you need like an RB2 or someone to just plug in there and just hope for some decent points and a touchdown, I think Michael Pirine has opened the door for Frank Gore here. Looks like we got a question real quick here from Blue Crew. Looks like it's a question about Tampa Bay and the Rams here. So we need 16 points for the win tonight. Who's more likely to get me there, Godwin or Kupp, half PPR? Well, the good news is I think of all the receivers in tonight's game, I think those are my 2 favorite options. We have seen a lot of spreading around in Tampa Bay now that Antonio Brown is there. But if we think about what the Rams are going to try to do with the Bucs receivers, you would think Jalen Ramsey is going to be on the outside with Mike Evans for the most part, and they kind of they move around Godwin quite a bit. They move around Antonio Brown quite a bit. So I think those are going to be the 2 primary receivers tonight for Tom Brady. I do like the Bucs offense and Tom Brady in this one a little bit better than the Rams. But I guess here's my reasoning for liking the Bucs offense a little bit more is when Jared Goff gets pressured, he's kind of shown to be not a very good quarterback. And if you think about what Tampa Bay can do with their pass rushers, is they have a handful of guys that can get to Jared Goff and disrupt him. If we look quickly, I just want to pull up, I guess, the Rams-Dolphins game, because that was a game where the Dolphins just exposed the offensive line there. I think they're missing their best offensive lineman as well. I can't remember his name. Is it Andrew Whitworth? But he's going to be out in this one. But the game here against the Dolphins, I'm wondering if we see Tampa Bay bring a lot of pressure. You did see Jared Goff throw the ball for 355 yards, but 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. So I guess the point that I'm making here is even in a game where Jared Goff threw a ball a lot, he was hit, he turned it over, you look at what his struggle target is, and it's going to be Cooper Kupp with 11 catches, 110 yards, 20 targets in that one. So I think Kupp's going to be one of the preferred targets tonight in terms of targets. But just, I guess, based on how I feel the game's going to go tonight, I feel more comfortable with Chris Godwin being able to score a touchdown tonight. I just think the Bucs offense is going to be a little bit more harder to defend, and I wouldn't expect me to see Chris Godwin find the end zone maybe once, maybe twice in this one. I just want to see what Chris Godwin's been doing the last few weeks. So he's got himself a pretty safe floor. You did say this is half PPR. So I guess if you need 16 points for the win, here, I wonder if I can choose half PPR. But, I mean, we're likely going to need a touchdown here. So if you had to ask me who's likely to score a touchdown, I'm going to say Chris Godwin, and hopefully we can get, one of these. He's due for a 100-yard game, and he's kind of due for a touchdown. So I think Godwin, for me, I'm going to lean with Godwin and the Buccaneers side there. Thanks for the question, Blue Crew. But I mean, to be honest, like if you needed someone to get you the points there, I think you have the 2 best options in tonight's game. So if you think it's Cooper Kupp, I'm totally cool with either one. But I think the Bucs offense right now, the way it's been playing, Tom Brady's on a roll. We'll see. I think Chris Godwin can be the guy to get you in the end zone tonight. So we're kind of just looking at some of the Roto World news here. We just talked about Michael Pirine. Frank Gore is probably going to be on the waiver wire list. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow night. Again, Joe Burrow, season-ending IR. That's so sad to see. So Greg Olsen here, they put him on injury reserve with the foot injury. We're going to see probably more snaps for Will Dissly and Jacob Hollister. So if you really need help at tight end, I think we could get – the pecking order is probably going to be Will Dissly for sure. But Jacob Hollister actually showed some really nice things at the end of last year, so I'm open to both tight ends being usable. But if you had to put your priorities straight, I think Will Dissly's ready to really put his stamp on this offense. We're probably not going to see Greg Olsen the rest of the year. Maybe, end of the week 16, 17 playoffs, maybe that's about it. But all of a sudden, there's some Seattle tight end points that we could be searching for. We got some more COVID list here news with Eddie Jackson, Chicago Bears. They play Sunday night against Green Bay. Let's see here on the next page. Christian McCaffrey, he's still ruling, the coach Matt Rule is still ruling that McCaffrey's week to week, but it's kind of like what I said here earlier, that they do play Minnesota this weekend. Then they have the bye week 13. So I mean, they're 4-6. They're actually really close, right on the fringe of the NFC wild card race. So it's tough because there's a handful of teams above them. I just want to pull this up real quick and we'll look at the NFC playoff race because it's getting heated in the middle. There's like 7 to 10 teams in each conference right now. So you do have the Carolina Panthers sitting at 4-7. They have their bye next week. So if they're sitting at 5-7, they still have a chance to win out and go 9-7 or whatever. So it's unlikely that they'll make the playoffs, but maybe Christian McCaffrey plays this week. I doubt it. They're probably going to hold him out until week 14. So we'll monitor that this week. Julio Jones, of course, he left with a hamstring injury yesterday. I think it was like the end of the first quarter where this happened. He only logged like maybe 20 snaps. So this is a big one for us to watch going forward. The Falcons are kind of on the outs as well. And any soft tissue injury with Julio seems to be stretched out longer than it needs to be. So if they can play this weekend, I mean, we're nervous to get an injured Julio in there, but because we've seen what he can do at his best, it's hard to bench Julio. So we'll monitor his practice reports this week. Because he's kind of dinged up already, I think we're going to probably try to add Russell Gage back to our teams this week. I don't know how many people own him in terms of like percent rostership in other leagues, but Russell Gage, he's the number 2 receiver if Julio Jones is out, so we'll keep an eye on that. Let's see here. This was kind of the big news of the morning here. We got Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins. Both guys land on the COVID list. So one of the hot ads, I think, on the waiver wire this week is going to be our running back, Gus Edwards. So I have him at the top of my list here. It is against Pittsburgh, but because they're going to be shorthanded at the running back position, I think we're going to see Gus Edwards get 80 to 90% of the touches for the Baltimore Ravens. And then you'll probably see a little bit of Justice Hill mixed in there for passing work and just some change of pace work. But it's going to be Gus Edwards' backfield. I do think he could rush for a touchdown now that we know there's no Ingram or Dobbins. So if you really need a pinch at RB2, I think Gus Edwards is going to be the guy. And just because it's Thursday, this is probably just a 1-week rental for a starter, but if Gus Edwards looks really good, maybe he earns more work going forward, and it is against Pittsburgh, so it's going to be a tough, hand it off, kind of run the ball, see what happens kind of game here. So Gus Edwards is going to be a guy that we're going to look at and probably talk a little bit more about tomorrow. Nick Foles, the Chicago Bears quarterback injury. So I don't think Nick Foles practiced today. Mitch Trubisky, I thought, was seen with the helmet today. So this is a developing situation that we'll have to see. I mean, we're probably not going to get any practice reports until Wednesday on this, but I'm assuming Nick Foles is not going to play. They are hopeful Mitch Trubisky can play, but he's had a shoulder injury the last couple weeks. So they're both kind of stretches to play, but it feels like Trubisky might make the start in Green Bay. And if neither can start, it's going to be Tyler Bray, and we're going to want to start the Green Bay Packers defense pretty much everywhere we can. But even if it's Trubisky or Foles, I think the Packers defense, if you are in a defense league and you need to start someone, or you've been streaming defenses, I think the Packers defense could be, especially at home against Lambeau. I think they just announced too that Lambeau is going to open up the game for some fans here. That's the first time Lambeau is going to be having a certain amount of fans in the stadium this year. So I just have a feeling the Packers, just coming off that bad loss in overtime last night, Packers are going to try to exercise their demons against Chicago. Again, I'm just sick of seeing the Joe Burrow news. It's so sad. Let's see here. So again, the Ravens-Steelers game, it's on track. They did have a handful of players and coaching staff get on the COVID-19 list, but they're still going to go forward with this game. Moving on here, I guess this is probably looking at some of the news and notes from yesterday's game. So I don't know if I want to go over any of this stuff, but for now, I guess I'll kind of take the time to, if there's any more questions in the chat room, go ahead and fire away. We'll probably hang out for another 15 to 20 minutes yet. I really don't have anything on my schedule here. We're just going to be going over the news and notes. So I kind of wanted to pull up. I've been filling out my Week 11 opportunity report, and you can find that on the fantasyfellowship.com. Just go to the homepage here, and then I fill in the opportunity report, which is all of your stats and your snap counts from yesterday's and Thursday, Monday night games. So I'm just going to kind of call out some of the things that stick out to me. It was interesting to me that Chase Edmonds and Kenyon Drake, they both had the same amount of snaps basically last week. And it's when the Cardinals are expected probably to lose that we're going to want to put Chase Edmonds in the lineup, because that's when they're going to be throwing the ball a little bit more, playing from behind. That just means more Chase Edmonds in the third down role, the 3-minute drill kind of, or the 2-minute drill kind of stuff. So we do like Chase Edmonds when the Cardinals are expected to be losers. And then, I mean, the Atlanta Falcons, I know this game was just garbage yesterday for the Falcons offense. But the one thing that I noticed here was Brian Hill had more snaps than Todd Gurley. So if you're a Todd Gurley owner, we kind of raised our eyebrows. This game was a complete stinker for everyone, maybe except Calvin Ridley with his 5 for 90. Like, that was nice. Russell Gage, 7 for 58. But these were really the only two guys that were worth a damn yesterday. So Todd Gurley, I think the Falcons are going up against I can't remember I think they're playing the Raiders. So we're gonna have to see them air it out and probably try to establish the run with Gurley again. But just keep an eye on Brian Hill here. If you have the extra roster spot, this is basically handcuff season. And I just think that as the season gets, we were so nervous about Gurley getting injured at some point this year, and now they're giving Brian Hill a little bit more snaps. It wasn't a very productive day for Brian Hill, but 4 for 18 yards. He's at least that's a positive stat. It's not like he's running 4 for 5 yards or anything. So just keep an eye on the running backs situation for Atlanta. And again, with Julio Jones missing most of the game here, they just let Russell Gage kind of fill in here, and then it looked like Christian Blake was the next man up. So we'll see what happens here. I'm gonna have to edit that synopsis here. But the other weird thing was Hayden Hurst played on 87% of the snaps and only 2 targets, 0 catches. We can't have that from our tight end 1. So we'll have to reconsider Hayden Hurst next week with this kind of outlier game on his season so far. Looking at the Carolina Panthers, Mike Davis had a really good game. TJ Moore probably had his best game of the season. I know it was a season high in yards. So this is interesting to see. If you're DJ Moore owners, it looks like he's finally back into our good graces here. He's probably a wide receiver 2 going forward, I think, at this point. And it really depends if it's Teddy or PJ Walker. But for some reason, PJ Walker had a really good connection with DJ Moore. So we'd love to see that. Robbie Anderson kind of took the back seat in this one. And Curtis Samuel had a pretty nice day here too. So now I guess if we don't get if Teddy Bridgewater misses any more time this season, we're going to continue to use DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Curtis Samuel. I know this game was against the Detroit Lions, but you got to think that they're going to have to throw the ball. He threw the ball 34 times, 24 completions, 250 yards. The offense looked good. It was functional. So 20 points, you'd like to see more, but they didn't really need to do more against the Lions, who put up 0 points. So the Panthers impressed us yesterday. The Dallas Cowboys impressed us, 31-28, and now they play Washington on Thursday. Football, it's going to be the middle game of the day. I think it's like a 2 or 3 o'clock start. But Andy Dalton, all of a sudden, 203 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's going to be back into our mix at quarterback 2 Superflex leagues. Ezekiel Elliott looks like he finally found his footing again. So over 100 yards, 11 receiving yards, and a touchdown there. Tony Pollard needs to be on people's teams. He should not be hanging around the waiver wire. Again, if anything happens, this is handcuff season. If anything happens to Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard has shown that he's a very good player. He should be on people's bench, especially if you are the Ezekiel Elliott owner. It's frustrating to see Michael Gallup lead the team in wide receiver snaps, only 5 targets, 2 catches, 29 yards. So I totally get it. I don't really know if we're ever going to feel comfortable starting Michael Gallup at any point this year. So it's really questionable. Like if you wanted to get, I think at this point I'd rather add Russell Gage and play Russell Gage over a guy like Michael Gallup. So we'll kind of see about that. I just don't know if we're ever going to feel comfortable with Michael Gallup in our lineups. Amari Cooper, he's fine as a wide receiver 3. And then I think at this point, CeeDee Lamb, man, the rest of the way, he's going to be a wide receiver 3. That catch that he made in the back of the end zone to kind of just lay out and just fall backwards and just make that kind of one-handed catch, that was pretty remarkable. So they're trying to find ways to get him the ball. They did give him 2 rush attempts for 12 yards, 6 targets. Would like to see more yards per catch there, but he gets a touchdown, has himself a really good highlight reel play there. So we love CeeDee Lamb and I think Amari Cooper going forward. And then Dalton Schultz here, logging 91% of the snaps, catches the touchdown at the end of the game, 4 for 25, 12.5 points as a tight end. We'll take that. He really just has a simple, safe floor of like 6 to 8 points. He's going to catch 3 or 4 balls there for Andy Dalton. So Dalton Schultz is definitely a guy, if he's on your waiver wire, you should think about him this week against the Washington football team. And we'll talk more about that probably on tomorrow too, but Wednesday for sure we'll talk. Wednesday night I'll talk about all 3 of the Thursday Thanksgiving games in depth. So we'll go over those then. The Lions, I really don't even know what to say about the Lions here. This was just completely frustrating here. Matt Stafford, 18 of 33, 178 yards, completely unusable in quarterback 1 leagues. Neither running back was worth a damn at all here. Marvin Jones, if you played Marvin Jones, cool. We got 4 for 51, so that's 9.1 points, or it's going to be probably 5.1 if you play in a non-PPR league. And then nothing really else happened here. I guess TJ Hawkinson was useful, 4 catches for 68 yards. That's fine as a tight end one here. Looks like we got a cool question here from Claudio Jenkins. Can you give a tentative top 8 receivers rest of the way in PPR leagues? So I'm a big fan of schedule in this as well too, because I guess the team that I've been looking at the most is Tampa Bay with their schedule weeks 14, 15, and 16. They're going to be playing, I think, Atlanta, Denver, and Detroit. If maybe not Denver, but I know it's some bottom teams. So I do believe Chris Godwin's probably a guy that I would look to make sure to put in my top 8. But of course, Devontae Adams is probably playing the best football of anyone right now at the receiver position. Tyreek Hill locked into with Patrick Mahomes. I think you got to do that. And then Keenan Allen, man, he just had like 20 targets yesterday, 16 catches. And with the Chargers schedule the rest of the way, I think to me, Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Keenan Allen, these guys would be my clear top 3 guys. I have no questions with these guys whatsoever. Justin Herbert's going to keep flinging it. Patrick Mahomes needs to, I mean, they're still trying to chase the Steelers for a number 1 seed. So they have a lot to play for, and they should be playing consistently throughout week 16. I mean, at this point, it's frustrating with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett because they're kind of boom bust, but it's starting to seem like DK Metcalf is becoming a little bit more consistent there. So I think both these guys, I mean, one of these guys is probably a top 5 play almost every week. It's hard to predict which ones. But as far as a top 5 standpoint, I think I like DK Metcalf a little bit more. He's got more yards, more touchdowns. So I think I'm more of a fan of DK Metcalf. And then guys that I think I would have over Tyler Lockett, I mean, Stephon Diggs. I think before the bye week, he was leading the league in receptions and targets. So I really like Stephon Diggs. And then as far as, I guess, kind of filling out the final, 2 or 3 receivers for your top 8, I do think Tyler Lockett's in that range. DeAndre Hopkins is definitely in that range with Kyler Murray. I like Adam Thielen, but again, he's kind of inconsistent. He does lead the NFL in wide receiver touchdowns, so maybe Adam Thielen can be a top 8 receiver. It's sad because Tyler Boyd's probably going to fall pretty far here. But I guess like one of the dark horses here is Calvin Ridley, because with Julio Jones and his hamstring injury, I think we're probably going to be ranking Calvin Ridley as a top 5 receiver the rest of the way. So this is definitely a guy that I would put in my top 8. I really want him for the rest of the season. So we like Ridley. And I would say basically, from Hopkins on up. So those would probably be my 8 receivers that I really, really like. But I mean, Terry McLaurin, Adam Thielen, those guys are all right there. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, they've kind of been trading off good weeks there. And I guess everything on down here the rest of the way is a little bit inconsistent. So I think that would be my top 8 there. I hope that helps. Thanks for the question, Claudio. We got our guy Stephen Drakes here. What's going on, man? So we got, how well do you think Kupp will be good tonight? And do you feel Carson should be back next week? So actually, Pete Carroll, there was a quote on Pete Carroll saying that he expects Chris Carson to play next Monday night. And because it's Monday night, he gets the extra day of rest. And based on what it sounded like for Thursday Night Football, it sounded like he could have played, but they were kind of just being cautious. They liked that Carlos Hyde was a full go. They had some proper depth at the running back position. So I don't think they necessarily needed him against the Cardinals. So I'm expecting Chris Carson to be ready to go on Monday Night Football against the Eagles. And then Cooper Kupp. We had a question earlier in the night. Our guy Blue Crew here asked the question, Cooper Kupp or Chris Godwin? Tonight in a half PPR, he needed someone to give him 16 points. And my response was basically, if you had to pick 2 players tonight that I feel really good about, it's going to be Godwin and it's going to be Cooper Kupp. So if you think about, let's just start with the Rams defense. You got Jalen Ramsey, who primarily shadows the receiver for the most part. You think about who he's shadowed before. He pretty much locked on to DK Metcalf a couple weeks ago. And that basically, to me, it just lines up that he's going to be on a lot of Mike Evans tonight. So for Tampa Bay, how are they going to move the ball? Teams kind of struggle to run the ball against the Rams. So I just feel like Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown are going to be the leading target guys for Tom Brady tonight. Chris Godwin has yet to have a 100-yard receiving game. So I think the odds for him tonight would be to be the star of the game tonight for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see a 100-yard performance and a touchdown out of Chris Godwin tonight. I feel really good there. But then looking at the Rams side of the ball, you got Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. Maybe the tight ends kind of get into it a little bit, but Tampa Bay's got a pretty decent secondary. I did want to pull up here and let's just kind of look and see what some teams have been doing against Tampa Bay's secondary. But the advantage for Cooper Kupp right now is going to be Cooper Kupp lines up in the slot. So he's going to avoid, the Carlton Davis. He's going to avoid, I can't remember the other cornerback over there. But Tampa Bay, one of the better teams against the pass. So let's just kind of take a look and see who their biggest days have been from. So DJ Moore last week, he's kind of like a slot receiver for Carolina. He had 19.6. Look at Emmanuel Sanders here. He's the definition of a small, quick receiver, 13.8. Sterling Shepard, another small, quick receiver, 15.4. Aguilar was able to kind of get open deep on a big play here. Devontae Adams, 12.1. Allen Robinson's a better outside receiver. Keenan Allen, 14.2. So I think, if you're starting Cooper Kupp tonight, I think you have something in this double-digit range of outcomes here that I wouldn't be surprised. So you need the Rams to lock down Ronald Jones. I think that's pretty doable here. As far as the Rams and Cooper Kupp, you're looking at it. I think you're a lock for a double-digit game tonight. And then let's just pull up and see what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been doing, or I guess what the Rams have been allowing to running backs. The good news is you're avoiding Ronald Jones off of his career breakout game. So the chances of that happening again, I don't really see happening tonight. So Tampa Bay, if we focus here on a PPR points per game here. So Tampa Bay is one of the 11th best teams as far as against running backs, and the Rams are up here at the 8th best team. So they only allow about 21.2 PPR points to the running back. They've only allowed 4 rushing touchdowns all year, 706 yards. That's one of the fewest in the leagues. So let's just look and see who the big games have been against these guys here. So Alex Collins, 11.7 last week. Myles Gaskins, 15.3. David Montgomery, 11.9. Raheem Mostert, I think he got hurt in this one. He had 9.6. And then a couple tens here. Devin Singletary, 16.1. Sanders and Elliott had the big boom games here. So I would be surprised if we see something over 20. I think the best outcome from Ronald Jones is probably going to be somewhere in this 9 range at the floor, and maybe at the most 16. I could see him maybe getting 70, 80 yards and a touchdown. So I don't feel great about him. I do think we might see a little bit of more Leonard Fournette tonight as they try to, Leonard Fournette's still kind of their third down back. I don't expect Tampa Bay to just lock down what the Rams are doing. So I think this could be a back and forth game. So we'll see what happens with Ronald Jones. But I guess the good news is you avoided his boom game from last week. The Rams pretty good against the run. They haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher all season. So I would be shocked if we see Ronald Jones rush for 100 yards. I guess the players that have rushed for touchdowns against Los Angeles, Alex Collins, Myles Gaskins, and then basically the first couple of weeks here with Miles Sanders and Ezekiel Elliott. So only 4 rushing touchdowns all year. The odds are this is not the Ronald Jones game you are looking for. So I guess that's good news for you, Steven. And I think Cooper Kupp, I was talking about this earlier. We actually pulled up the game that I was thinking about was when the Rams played Miami. And Miami's pass rush really, really got to Jared Goff, and they were able to just disrupt him. I think he had 2 picks, two fumbles maybe. And I think Tampa Bay does have the personnel to disrupt the offensive line of the Rams to kind of rattle Jared Goff. So it's not going to – and I guess we looked at the box score, and Cooper Kupp had 20 targets in that game. He is basically the struggle target for Jared Goff. So if there's one Rams receiver I like, it's Cooper Kupp. And if there's one Tampa Bay receiver, it is Chris Godwin. So hopefully you guys got those guys in. And I don't know, I kind of got lost here. Let's see what else we were talking about. We were kind of just going over the opportunity report that I have here on the fantasyfellowship.com. I don't even want to talk about the Lions anymore. The Packers, they had a really interesting game last night. Nothing really new changed for fantasy. It was nice to see Robert Tonyan, 5 targets, 5 catches, 44 yards, 1 touchdown. He's going to be back in our lineups probably against Chicago. It wouldn't surprise me to see him have a pretty good night. And I think all the Packers on offense are going to have a pretty good night. If you remember what the Minnesota Vikings did against the Chicago Bears not too long ago, they were able to get both their receivers to eat. The tight ends had some plays. I really think the Green Bay Packers are in a good spot on Sunday Night Football. As far as the Texans, we'll probably be talking about them a lot in the coming days because they do play on Thursday. Duke Johnson has been disappointing us in our PPR lineups. Only 3 catches, 20 yards, 15 yards on the ground. He's getting frustrating to own, but he does play the Lions. We would expect the Texans to have their way with Detroit, so maybe this is a Duke Johnson bounce-back game. There was some injuries for the wide receivers here on Houston's side. Randall Cobb left with a toe injury. They might even put him on IR. And then Kenny Stills also left with a quad injury. So now they're down their 3rd and their 4th receivers. And that's why Kiki Cutie was able to step in here with 35 snaps, 4 targets, only 2 catches for 10 yards, but he did get the touchdown. So we're probably going to see more Kiki in this one on Thursday football here. I think it's the morning game. Yeah, the Lions are always the morning game. But the main takeaway with this Texans game against the Patriots was Of the 37 pass attempts that Deshaun Watson attempted, he ended up throwing 11 balls to his tight end. So basically 1 out of every 3 throws went to a tight end. And Jordan Akins down here, 6 targets, 5 catches, 83 yards. And now we play against Detroit. So we should be kind of excited about what the Texans offense can do. And just because the tight end position is so scarce, and if you get a guy that's being targeted 5-6 times and he can get some really big chunk plays, I really like Jordan Akins' game. He's the clear tight end there, led the team in targets, led the team in tight end snaps as well. Or he led the tight ends in targets. So I like Jordan Akins going forward. He's probably going to be on my discussion tomorrow night. As far as the Colts here, I mean, Jonathan Taylor finally got the attempts, 22 for 90. He continues to play well in the passing game, 4 catches for 24 yards. They do play Tennessee again this week, so Tennessee bottled him up. It was more of a Nyheim Hines game, so we're probably going to have to do this Nyheim Hines, Jonathan Taylor dance again one more week, where they're probably going to flip-flop on us now. But we should be a little bit more encouraged about Jonathan Taylor and what he can do in our lineups. Again, we're going up against Tennessee on Sunday, so we could see Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor both have RB2 plus games. And then as far as the receivers, it was kind of frustrating here because T.Y. Hilton, he did lead the team in targets, but only 3 catches, 36 yards. Again, they play the Titans. So maybe T.Y. Hilton becomes a wide receiver 3 flex for us, but it's all about Michael Pittman Jr. He did take a 45-yard crossing route all the way to the house. He had Mo Alley Cox leading the way for a big block to help kind of steal the deal. So Michael Pittman Jr., he's got a full head of steam. He can be a wide receiver 3 flex. And again, he just had his Thursday Night Football, Colts and Titans. He had over 100 yards. I think he had like a 20-yard carry too. So all of a sudden, the Colts offense, I know it was the Packers defense, but they are kind of rolling. They play, it's a fun match against the Titans. Both teams are 7-3. So that's going to be one of my more interesting games to watch on Sunday. Moving on to the Jaguars, I kind of talked about this. We're going to have to watch the practice reports this week to see if Gardner Minshew is back. If you do play in a super flex league, I'm interested in picking up Gardner Minshew if he was dropped, over the last few weeks. I think the Jake Luton experiment has run its course. So we should probably see Gardner Minshew back, maybe not this week, but the following week. So I think there's a good chance we see him. Looks like we got a question in the chat room real quick from Carlos Orozco. So start 3, we got DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson, and Diontae Johnson. Jesus. This is a super squad of receivers, man. Okay, so we got Diontae Johnson going up against the Ravens on Thursday night. Let's just pull up here. I want to pull up Ravens, Steelers. I want to look at that box score from earlier this year. Ravens, Steelers. Box score. So these two teams just played recently. Steelers were able to hold off the Ravens. I'm curious to see what our guy Diontae Johnson did, even if I don't know if he played. So I think, this was the last game that he got hurt. So we only had 1 for 6. Roethlisberger only throws for 182, 2 touchdowns. Juju Smith-Schuster led the way with 67, Claypool 42. So I'm a little bit concerned about the upside of Diontae Johnson, but man, he just had an awesome game. It was against the Jaguars. We should be a little bit nervous about this game being a tight-knit game again. Again, Roethlisberger was held to 182 yards in this one, and it's not the Jaguars, so we shouldn't expect what Diontae Johnson was able to do last week. But I guess the thing going for Diontae this week is Juju Smith-Schuster is hurt. He had the toe injury. I don't know if anyone saw, but he was walking away to the sidelines, and he stepped on a referee's yellow flag, and it tweaked his foot or his toe or something. So we have to monitor Juju Smith-Schuster's health. But Diontae Johnson in a Thursday night football game against the Ravens, I could see him making a big play or two, but at the moment right now, he feels the most risky. And then we do have Allen Robinson going up against the Packers. So I just want to show there's a website here that I like to use called StatMuse. And what we're going to do here is we're going to type in Allen Robinson versus Packers, and we're going to type up game logs. So this is the Sunday night football game next week. He's played Green Bay 4 times in his career. The last 2 times, 7 catches, 125 yards. 7 catches, 102 yards. He's never scored against Green Bay, but you're seeing, his worst game was 3 for 54. So that's a pretty good floor of 7.4 points. But again, against Jair Alexander last year, he was able to get 7 catches and go over 100 yards twice. So I think Allen Robinson has a really good fit there. And then we got Michael Thomas going up against the Denver Broncos. With the way Taysom Hill played, he really locked on to our guy, Michael Thomas. So I think at the moment right now, I like Hopkins, Thomas, and Allen Robinson. And Diontae Johnson just has the most, I guess he has the most risk. But then again, with Allen Robinson, who's the quarterback? Is it Nick Foles? Is it Mitch Trubisky? Is it Tyler Bray? There's a lot going on there. So I think if we get some practice reports from the Chicago Bears and we know who the quarterback is going to be, that might change my mind. But for now, I think Hopkins and Thomas, those guys are in your lineup for sure. Let's wait and see who the quarterback is going to be for Chicago. And if you wanted to pivot from Allen Robinson, I got Green Bay, massive vibes for them just taking Chicago out and just stomping on them. After what happened yesterday, they got fans coming back to Lambeau now. So I'm nervous about Robinson. It really depends on who the quarterback is. But like we said, last year, even with Mitch Trubisky, he went over 100 yards, 7 catches. So he's got a pretty good floor there. So I think that's how I would rank those 3 guys. Thanks for the question, Carlos. But where were we? So I don't know. We're just hanging out. We're going on here about 35 minutes. We're going to be up. I'm willing to hang out another 15, 20 minutes, whatever you guys need. Yeah, man, no problem, Carlos. That's what I like to do. When you got some stud receivers like that, it's hard to want to bench those guys. And then especially with Diontae Johnson having that game that he had yesterday. But I don't know. There's a lot of moving parts. I think let's wait and see what the Bears' offense is going to look like. And you basically, if you're feeling the risk, maybe we need to see what Juju Smith-Schuster is doing for his practice reports too. Because if there's any chance that he's out, maybe Diontae Johnson is the guy to plug in there and we just get a lot of targets again. Or maybe Juju's limited and he's kind of like a decoy. So I don't know. You can always hit me up with more questions later, but I think for now that's how I would do it. I would play Allen Robinson over Diontae Johnson just because he's had some recent success against Jair Alexander, and that was with Mitch Trubisky. So there's almost no downside whether it's Foles or Trubisky. I think the only way I wouldn't want to play Allen Robinson is if it's Tyler Bray. So if we have any kind of information basically if there's any information before Thursday's kickoff, maybe that's Diontae Johnson would be the plug in there. So, but yeah, man, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the question. Thanks for everyone in the chat room so far. We're kind of just going over some of the news and notes here. I was looking at my opportunity report. I guess we were just talking about maybe Gardner Minshew coming back. That's good for Superflex leagues. But the main takeaway I had from Jacksonville is James Robinson is a boss. No matter what he does, this guy also just finds a way to get double-digit PPR points. This was the toughest matchup for the entire NFL for running backs, and he was still able to get us double-digit fantasy points. So we love James Robinson. Basically a must-start at this point. He's surviving with 6th-round pick quarterback Jake Luton. Gardner Minshew's been in there most of the season too, but man, James Robinson, he's looking like a league winner right now. So I know that in most of the leagues that I play, whoever has James Robinson is probably the team that's in first place and has the most wins. So a lot of fun there. Looks like we got one more question here from our guy Carlos. So what do you think about Chris Carson? We have Nick Chubb, but was thinking about picking J.K. Dobbins in case Carson doesn't pan out. So is Chris Carson available like in your waiver wire? Does someone not have him? Wow. So what do you think about Chris Carson? So it sounded like Pete Carroll said that he was going to, like Chris Carson would be ready to play. I want to just make sure I got that right. Let me just go to Twitter real quick and we'll search for this together. But Chris Carson, I'm pretty sure I read that Pete Carroll said that he expects Chris Carson to play Monday Night Football here. I was looking for this. I'm pretty sure I saw it this morning. Maybe we'll just Google it real quick. So Chris Carson, Pete Carroll, let's just see what happens here. I'm pretty sure, I don't know where I saw it, but so, this is what the Seahawks Wire is putting out. So they're expecting Chris Carson to be back Week 12, Monday Night Football. He gets the extra day to heal. It sounded like he was almost ready to go on Thursday night against the Cardinals. But at this point, I would say Chris Carson's got a probably 90% chance of playing. And that's good news for Chris Carson owners. So we have him, but he's been benched on my team. I've been relying on JD, but it's kind of iffy. Yeah, and the thing with JD McKissic is typically you want to play McKissic in a game where the Washington football team is favored to lose. So I don't really know what the odds are going to be this week against Dallas, but I'm assuming because Washington has a chance to win that game. They should probably continue to feed Antonio Gibson as good as he's looked. So I think for now, and now that we know J.K. Dobbins won't play, you're going to roll out Nick Chubb, and then I think we're all good to go for Chris Carson. As far as J.D. Mckissic, it's more of a risk. I really don't know if I want to tell you to whip out Mckissic on Thursday Night Football or on Thursday afternoon football, especially if Chris Carson's going to play. So if we get, typically Wednesday is the first day for practice reports. So if we hear that Chris Carson's back and he's limited, that's a really good sign. So I don't think we're going to need to rely on J.D. Mckissic for you. So let's fingers crossed, and we're going to get Chris Carson back against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then is that a full PPR league that you play in there, Carlos? Because I'm just curious, man. J.D. Mckissic. Let's look up Mckissic first, and then we'll kind of look and see what's going on here with the Cowboys defense and what do they allow quite a bit. So, I mean, Mckissic, this was a bad game, 9.9 points. So it's not the worst, where if you wanted to whip him out and get some skin in the game on Thursday football, maybe that's a good game. He did have one of his worst games against Dallas earlier in the year, 5 for 35. That's one of his better running games, but only 2 catches for 16 yards. So, but again, Washington was able to just whoop Dallas. I don't really know if we're going to see that again. But if you look in his J.D. McKissic's losses, here's the theme here. So you see the 9.9 over here, and then we got the win column here. So in the wins for Washington, you see 9.9, and then we go up a little bit, and a 7.1. So in the games where Washington's probably going to win, he's not going to have a good game. But when they're losing, they need to throw the ball and come from behind. That's when Mckissic, can pop off for double digits, or these 17-point games that we're seeing here. But these 14 and 15 target games are outliers, that's for sure. So let's just hope we're going to get Chris Carson. And I think we should be good with Chris Carson for the playoff run for fantasy football. So, yeah, man, thanks for the question, Carlos. Talking about Kansas City real quick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked great. It was so fun to see him get the goal line touches finally. Only 1 catch for 8 yards. That needs to get worked on a little bit more. But just from what I saw last night, is they clearly like Darrell Williams to be the 2-minute offense guy. So he's going to be the guy catching the majority of passes when they need to score at the end of the half or the end of the game. And then Le'Veon Bell, he's just the handcuff role player that can get some touches every now and then. Tyreek Hill playing good football. Demarcus Robinson, 8 targets, 6 catches, 44 yards. We'll see what he can do going forward. But I do think Sammy Watkins is going to come back next week and probably throw a wrench in this whole receiver thing. So just with the Chiefs, it's simple. Just start your studs. The Las Vegas Raiders, I'm probably going to talk quite a bit about Nelson Aguilar tomorrow night on the Waiver Wire show, going live at 6 p.m. But, man, 9 targets, 6 catches, 88 yards, and 1 touchdown. He also had a really nice deep ball that it was a tough catch. He should have had it, but it was a very tough catch as he was falling down. So he could have had over 100 yards in this one. But, man, he is the clear go-to receiver for Derek Carr. He led the team in targets, even more than Darren Waller. And again, 88 yards, 1 touchdown. He's probably going to be available on a lot of people's waiver wire. And even if you don't need a wide receiver and you want to just kind of – one thing that I like to do is I like to kind of keep a bench spot available on the bottom of, just like the last player in my team. And, I kind of change that guy out maybe even week to week, or you just add a guy and maybe he pops and then you hit it. But you also like to play defense when you add players. And Nelson Aguilar is kind of becoming a guy here that I think we can trust for the fantasy playoff season, because you look at the schedule here, they're going to play the Atlanta Falcons this week, one of the worst teams against wide receiver, one of the worst teams against quarterback points. So we should see Derek Carr have a pretty nice game. Then they play the Jets. So all of a sudden you're looking at 2 really good games here. These games, week 12 and 13, are going to be the ones that get us to the fantasy playoffs. They're going to play the Colts, which is a little bit of a tough game. But then they play the Chargers and the Dolphins. So basically 4 out of the next 5 games are fantastic games for Derek Carr's passing game and Nelson Aguilar. So I'm probably going to talk up Aguilar a little bit more tomorrow night. I definitely think he shouldn't be chilling on waiver wires anymore. He's scoring touchdowns. He's making good plays, and Carr clearly trusts him. So I like Nelson Aguilar quite a bit going forward here. The Chargers, man, Kalen Ballage somehow racks up 7 catches, 27 yards. It's not pretty, but he's fine enough for PPR leagues. Big news, we got to watch for Austin Eckler this week. He's eligible to be activated from IR. They haven't done it yet, but there's a chance, man. There's a chance he can be activated maybe this week or the following week. So Kalen Ballage, as long as Austin Eckler's out, we're going to continue trusting Kalen Ballage as a running back too. I'm not sure who do the Chargers play this week. Let's see. I want to say it's an easier schedule for them this week. So they play Buffalo. Buffalo's defense is a little bit tougher against the pass, kind of easy to run. So I'm not too worried about Kalen Ballage in this one. So it looks like we got another question here from Bam Bo. What's going on, Bam? So the team is shaping up. We traded Fulgham, Galliman. Is that Wayne Gallman and Edmonds for Josh Jacobs? Hell yeah, you got Josh Jacobs, man. That was nice. We were just looking at the Raiders schedule. I don't know if you're here when we looked at that, but the Raiders, the next 4 out of the next 5 games, they have a really good schedule. They play Atlanta, and then they play, let's see here, the Jets, and then there's the Colts, but then they play the Chargers and the Dolphins. So some losing teams, a lot of good stuff there for the Raiders offense. So I love Josh Jacobs. And then you traded Tyreek for Chubb straight up. So my team is looking like Derek Carr, great schedule, Devontae Adams, fantastic, DK Metcalf, Josh Jacobs, Nick Chubb, Darren Waller, and Antonio Gibson. This sounds like a league winner, man. Good work. It's scary to trade a guy like Tyreek Hill, but it looks like you were able. I mean, you had the wide receiver depth here to do it, so I totally get it. And then you're running out 3 running backs, so I really, really like that too. So I think you are, yeah, man. Is this full PPR? Assuming I think at this point most people play full PPR. But that looks like a league winner, man. Nice work. So yeah, I don't know. We were just kind of talking about the Chargers here. Keenan Allen, 19 targets, 16 catches, 145 yards, and a touchdown. Wow. And then Mike Williams too, 7 targets, 4 for 72 and a touchdown. Everything just worked against the Jets. I'm trying to think who the Jets play next week, because we're gonna want everyone against the Jets. So they play the Dolphins. Oh, man. So Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, Salvon Ahmed, maybe Jakeem Grant. We'll talk about those guys a little bit more tomorrow night, but we'll see what happens there. But the Jets, man, very vulnerable team. So full PPR, 10-man league. Okay. And how's your are you in good shape? Do you have one of the top 2 teams in the league? Are you trying to fend off people for playoff positioning, or how are we how's the outlook looking for the playoff push here? Moving on down here, the Vikings, don't really need to talk much about the Vikings. We're starting Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Again, I don't know if anyone noticed, but Adam Thielen was put on the COVID list. We're going to have to monitor his reports all week. I would imagine he would need to practice by Friday or Saturday at the walkthrough. So something to keep an eye on here too is Adam Thielen going up against Carolina this week. They play on Sunday. I think it's a noon game. So just keep an eye on that. But for sure, we're going to want to get Justin Jefferson in our lineup right now. So, oh, wow. Okay, so we're 5-5 trying to win out. Well, hopefully, I mean, it sounds like you got the matchups. Especially this week, you got Derek Carr going up against Atlanta. Devontae Adams is in a smash spot against the Chicago Bears. I mean, just look at what the Vikings receivers were able to do against Chicago last Monday Night Football. I mean, Adam Thielen caught 2 touchdowns, and Justin Jefferson, like 160 yards or something. So you're getting a smash out of Adams. DK Metcalf is just great. Jacobs against Atlanta, Nick Chubb, good stuff. Oh, yeah. Okay, so yeah, now I remember this. Okay, so we got – I'm nervous about Mixon. I don't know if we're going to see Mixon anytime soon now that – I mean, with Joe Burrow out for the year, is there really an incentive for them to get Mixon back on the field? I don't know. It wouldn't be until week 14, but I guess the good news is you're probably going to get Austin Eckler for sure. So, yeah, if we can sneak you into the playoffs and you're whipping in Austin Eckler for sure, maybe get Joe Mixon peppered in there right now. But your starting lineup is really, really set. So I think you're going to be a force to reckon with. I mean, those are some big names at all the positions. So I'm assuming some leagues or some of your league mates are probably looking around at, hey, this team can't let this guy in the playoffs. So I like the strength of their starters there for sure. Something in New England caught my eye. Rex Burkhead, I don't know if it's a season-ending injury, but it didn't look good. He had the knee injury. It did not look good. And then you see James White lead the team in snaps. They were losing for the most part here. So we see a lot of James White in the hurry up, 9 targets, 6 catches, 64 yards. I don't know if we're going to see this all the time, but maybe we're interested. Now that Burkhead's out of the way, maybe this boosts James White's floor a little bit to an RB2 in PPR leagues. Damian Harris, again, Rex Burkhead, he's going to mess with the rushing attempts and the targets here. So I do think, that's what I know Rex Burkhead was they left him behind to be looked at by the medical staff somewhere in Houston, and it doesn't sound good. So I'm assuming Rex Burkhead's not going to be back anytime soon. And now they're just going to throw Sony Michel into this mix and just completely cap Damian Harris and James White. So it'll be frustrating. But I was frustrated because I started Damian Harris in a few leagues. He was off to such a great start, and then they just got down. So they went away from the run. But Damian Harris looks like he continues to be a potential RB2. We'll monitor and see what Sony Michel does. I'm assuming they're going to activate Michel with Burkhead out for the year probably. And then as far as receivers, man, Damiere Byrd comes out of nowhere. 6 for 132 and a touchdown, 7 targets. And Jacobi Meyers, 99% of the snaps, catches only 3 of his targets for 38 yards. So I still think I'm a big fan of Jacobi Meyers. 3 for 38, that's 6.8 points in a PPR league. That's his floor. He's been very good to us the last 3 games. So I think I'm going to go back to the well on Jacobi Meyers. He's going to be a wide receiver 3 flex. But just kind of interesting here, Cam Newton, he throws 40 passes and only 3 of them to Jacobi. So that was a little bit disappointing there. So we'll see if the Patriots offense can kind of get their stuff figured out again. The Saints offense is pretty simple, man. Start Taysom Hill. I think I don't own Alvin Kamara in, I don't think, any of my main leagues, and I'm nervous about Kamara. It's his first career game without a catch, which that's tough. That's his bread and butter. That's what made him get the contract. So I'm a little bit nervous there. So it looks like we got one more thing here from Bam. So this week we'll be going with Tua or Tannehill or Carr, be a stretch. I mean, I think I'm going to fall into Derek Carr going up against Atlanta. One of my favorite resources is on fftoday.com. If I hit the stats tab and I just roll down a little bit here, it does say fantasy points allowed to the quarterback. So we'll click in this, and assuming you're in a 4-touchdown passing league, let's go to ESPN here. Atlanta Falcons, man, they are the worst team statistically against the quarterbacks in fantasy football. So they allow 25.5 points per game to the quarterback. As far as touchdowns, they probably only one team has allowed more touchdowns than the Atlanta Falcons. In terms of yards, let's see here. Only one team has allowed more yards than the Falcons. And it's just, I don't know, man. Quarterback points against the Falcons. I think I like Derek Carr for sure in this one. Looks like we got another question from Carlos here. So our lineup is Patrick Mahomes, Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Allen Robinson, Nick Chubb, Chris Carson, and Hawkinson. That's a great lineup. Should I replace my wide receiver flex with a running back? And if so, who should I trade and target? Should I replace my wide receiver flex? So I'm assuming Allen Robinson is in your flex. At this point, you probably start 2 receivers, and then I think you start 2 receivers, 2 running backs, and then you've probably been plugging in Allen Robinson at the flex right now. So should we – I mean, if you can get one of the things for me is I look forward to schedules, and the Tampa Bay schedule is one of my favorite schedules the rest of the way. So I don't know if you can potentially get anybody like Godwin, Evans, or our guy Antonio Brown, or if you even like the Bucs, if that's something you want to be into. But Tampa Bay's schedule, weeks 14, 15, and 16, the fantasy playoffs, we're going to get Minnesota, Atlanta, and Detroit. And if we go back here to that list of fantasy points allowed to the quarterback here, so Atlanta, dead last. And who did we talk about here? So we got Atlanta, Detroit, and Minnesota. So Detroit Lions, they rank 15th here. And then the Vikings, they give up the 13th most points here. And then if we further do this and we look at the receivers here, so these are points against the wide receivers. The Falcons and the Vikings, 29th and 30th. And then you got the Lions up here at 17th, but we should expect all Tampa Bay's receivers are guys that I would like to trade for. Allen Robinson does have a really nice schedule down the stretch too, so I am kind of okay with holding on to him. As far as Hopkins and Michael Thomas, Michael Thomas, this is what it looked like with Taysom Hill. 12 targets, 9 catches, 104 yards. They're going to pepper him with targets the rest of the way, and I don't expect that to change. I really don't know if you need to make a trade at the moment. I think I like everyone kind of locked into where it is. But Carlos, I guess, what do you have chilling on the bench? If these are your starters, I'm just curious, what are we working with as potential flex plays or backup guys, stuff like that? I think that would help me answer that question a little bit more. But again, I really like Tampa Bay's schedule the rest of the way. I'm into that. We did. I mean, you could really find some gems on the waiver wire at certain times if you just make sure you have enough money. But I'm just kind of looking around for other names here that might interest me. I mean, a lot of players right now are hard to target in terms of trades because people are either, they either love them or hate them. So who's a buy low, I guess, right now? I mean, you're probably not getting Lockett or Metcalf. Let's see some other names that stick out. I mean, you could maybe buy low on Juju Smith-Schuster right now. He just had he dinged his toe up. I don't really know if he went 4 for 19. He had a bad game in this one, but again, he was dinged up. They do play on Thursday right away, so he might be limited or even a decoy in this one. So I would keep my eye on Juju Smith-Schuster. Maybe this is a guy that we could buy low in right now. Let's just take a look at what Smith-Schuster has been doing. Yeah, let's actually look at the Steelers schedule. I guess with the Steelers too, because they're undefeated, I mean, you think they got to go for the undefeated season, right? So we're going to see them play all their guys through week 16. But the rest of the way, they're going to play the Ravens, which is tough. Washington, we'll see about that. And then the Bills, Bengals, and the Colts. So Bills and Bengals might be some juicy matchups there. So I'm kind of into Juju Smith-Schuster as a buy low. Hey, what's going on, Fabian? How's it going, man? And yes, I do remember you. Hung out last week for a couple nights. How you doing, man? Just kind of just talking over some trade candidates, I guess, at the moment. Thinking about studs. No one's really sticking out here. Justin Jefferson. The problem with no one's going to want to trade away Justin Jefferson. So I think, I mean, for the most part, man, I think Mahomes, Hopkins, Thomas, Robinson, Chubb, Carson, and Hawkinson. I think I might just leave it, man. I think you're in a good spot. So our guy Fabian here picked up Dez. Is that good or no? Let's see here. What did our guy Dez do yesterday? I know he caught. I think I watched him catch at least 2 balls for sure. I think the only Baltimore Raven that I want on my team right now for the passing numbers is going to be Mark Andrews. But we see 4 for 28. This is first game back. Let's just look at the Ravens schedule real quick. I don't know if I'm ever going to feel comfortable starting Dez Bryant. So that might be an issue here. Let's just look at the Baltimore Ravens schedule real quick. So this week, of course, they play the Steelers, but then Cowboys, really good matchup. They play the Browns, really good matchup against the secondary. They play the Jaguars, and then the Giants. Okay, so maybe the Ravens pass catchers could be something here. Tommy, what's Andrew Bauer talking about here? Tommy want wingy. What is this? Tommy want wingy. But yeah, we're talking about Dez Bryant, I guess, right now. I mean, I don't know if I'd be comfortable to start Dez Bryant. You can hold on to him. If he has a good game against the Steelers, I would say definitely throw him up against the Cowboys. Looks like they play on back-to-back Thursday night footballs here, so that's kind of cool for Baltimore. So I guess you can hold on to Dez. I'm not super excited to hold on to him. But Fabian, tomorrow night I'll be going over my waiver wire show in depth. But if you can I do have on the fantasyfellowship.com, I think the link's in the description below. But if you want to look at it, I do have a list of receivers here that I think maybe if any of these guys are available, I would be open to adding them. But my favorite, I guess we'll talk about this. My favorite receivers to add for this week is going to be Jalen Reagor up against Seattle, Cole Beasley going up against the Chargers because John Brown's got a high ankle sprain, Allen Lazard in a really good spot here against Chicago, Michael Pittman Jr. Again, he went over 110 yards against the Tennessee Titans last Thursday Night Football. Russell Gage, because Julio Jones has the hamstring right now. We talked about Nelson Aguilar a little bit here. I think I would be more interested in all of these guys on this list here than Dez Bryant. So Fabian, if you have any kind of options to get one of these players, I think it's just so tough with Lamar Jackson. It's so hard to trust. I started Marquise Brown in a league yesterday that kind of backfired. I thought he was going to have a good game against Tennessee. So I'm rooting for Dez, but man, if you can get Jalen Reagor Monday Night Football against Seattle, I think that's going to be bombs away. Cole Beasley again because of John Brown, but we'll hang out tomorrow night and we'll go over some of these guys in detail a little bit. Looks like Carlos got back to us here. So on the bench, we got Adrian Peterson, Curtis Samuel, Jacoby Meyers, Teddy B, Hunter Henry, Naheem Hines, and Mckissic. Man, Carlos, you got a good team, Carlos, man. I don't know if I need to make a trade. I like where you're at. You can pull up Curtis Samuel if you need. Maybe I guess your job for the next couple of days would be if you can sell. If you can maybe try to you'd have to talk to some players, but you should be trying to get one of the best receivers in the game. If you could pair If you could pair Curtis Samuel with like Allen Robinson and try to upgrade at receiver, I think I'd be open to that. Basically, you want to do a 2-for-1. I think Curtis Samuel's a hot name right now that you could potentially trade. If you're comfortable starting, TJ Hawkinson the rest of the way, you could potentially move a receiver paired with Hunter Henry. I guess you have a luxury there with both tight ends. You can always pick up a backup tight end later, or Naheem Hines. I think you could potentially with these bench pieces, man. I think you might be able to ask people for a 2-for-1 trade. If someone needs running back, you can offer them Mckissic and add Curtis Samuel, or you could add Jacobi. That's what I would try to do. So basically, your job would be the next couple of days, try to sell some of these pieces. I think I'd be okay with selling Allen Robinson. Say you sell Allen Robinson with Mckissic, you might be able to get a Tyler Lockett situation, going on or something like that. So, yeah, man, you got a pretty good team here. So I think the one weak spot though would be Allen Robinson. We don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be, but everything else looks really good, man. Even if you didn't make a trade and just held on to, I think you'd be in a good spot. So, yeah, man, Jacobi had a bad game. I don't know why. Cam Newton threw the ball 40 times and only 3 targets for Jacobi. But if that's his floor, 6.8 points, I don't mind it as a wide receiver 3. He should bounce back next week. And, yeah, man, if you can get Curtis Samuel, I think I would – I mean, Curtis Samuel over Des Bryant, I would recommend that 9 times out of 10 for sure. So let's just look at what Curtis Samuel's been doing the last few games. And especially now that we got one game with PJ Walker, I think we are going to feel pretty good about our Panthers receivers. And I guess Carlos too. If you do have Curtis Samuel. If you wanted to try to get a DJ Moore or a Robbie Anderson, I wouldn't mind that. I think DJ Moore is the guy to own there in Carolina. But with Curtis Samuel, man, you see what he's been doing the last month and a half of football. Sure, a bad game's 4-2, but if you can get these 20-point games from Curtis Samuel, you'll accept a low game every now and then. I think everyone is entitled to 1 or 2 bad games for the season. So Curtis Samuel, man, go ahead, Fabian, go get him, man. But what time is it? 7:02. I think I'll answer maybe one more question, and then I'm gonna get off, and we'll enjoy this awesome Monday Night Football game. I got I'm a secret Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan. I have been since childhood. We got a random, those plastic helmets that you used to get like as a kid that you could actually wear. I got a Tampa Bay one at a garage sale one time. So I just became a Tampa Bay fan from a long time. So Green Bay, Tampa Bay, those are my favorite teams. But yeah, thanks for everyone for hanging out in the chat room. Fabian, you got it, man. What do you got? One more question just for you. Yeah, I want to thank everyone tonight for hanging out in the chat room. We got our guy Fabian with one more question here. Andrew Bauer, that's my brother, hanging out. We got Tom Brady starting tonight in the league that we share. We share a keeper league team, so hopefully we get our 14 points needed from Tom Brady to move us to 7-4, hopefully. Thanks for hanging out in the chat room, Carlos. Thank you, Bambo. It's cool because I'm starting to recognize some of you guys as recurring people in the chat room. So I really appreciate it. We had Stephen Drakes earlier in the show. What's going on, Stephen? Thanks again for hanging out. Claudio Jenkins, thanks for your questions tonight too. And then we had the Blue Crew kicking off the first question of the night. So I appreciate everybody in the chat room. I love seeing all the questions here. And just before I get to Fabian's question, Andrew says, fire them cannons. We'll see what Tampa Bay can do. So Fabian here. So if I hold on to Dez until Thanksgiving and he has a good game, I can sell him high or keep him. Yeah, I think that's worth holding on to. Let me just pull up here while we're looking at it. I'm curious to see how many snaps Dez got because he's a struggle target for Lamar Jackson. He's never going to be a deep threat anymore, but he could potentially rack up. I'm assuming that you play in PPR, Fabian. So where is the Baltimore Ravens game? Why can't I find it? So Ravens, Tennessee. All right. So right now I'm just looking to see how many snaps Dez Bryant played. So on the Ravens side over here, it went Willie Snead led the team in receiver snaps, 48, Marquise Brown, 47, and Dez Bryant, 35. So straight off the practice squad to 35 snaps. So I'm a little bit intrigued. He's probably going to be their number 3 receiver going forward. So yeah, if you wanted to, I don't think I would start Des Bryant going up against the Steelers. That seems kind of risky to me. But yeah, I think I'm okay with holding on to Dez if he has one more good game or if he improves a little bit, if he gets more snaps. We're kind of interested in that. But definitely don't play him, I think, on Thanksgiving. Well, let's watch him. I think that's another good opportunity too to see him in real time, in real person, and get a game in our eyes there. So I think you could potentially sell him high or keep him. If you know someone that really wants Des Bryant, I think you could probably sell him. But I mean, definitely, I guess with Fabian here, yes, should I also pick up Curtis Samuel? For me, I would rather have Curtis Samuel just because we've seen some like 3 out of his last 4 games have been 20 plus games. So he's got some potential to get, some high end fantasy production there. So I would be surprised if we ever see Des Bryant getting 20 plus game the rest of the way. To me, Curtis Samuel is the higher ad there. But I totally get it if you are a Des fan. That would be my advice. Hold on to him for one game. Watch him on Thursday Night Football. If it's good, it's good. You can hold on to him, trade him, whatever you need, or we could potentially move on. So, but yeah, thank you for the questions, everybody. I think that's going to do it for tonight's show. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to hit 100 by Thursday, if that's cool. 100 subscribers would be great. That's one of the goals of mine for the season. And yeah, I don't know. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out in the chat room, asking questions. Enjoy the football game tonight. We'll see you guys again 6 o'clock tomorrow night. I'll be doing my waiver wire show, so come back with your questions, whatever else you need, and enjoy the game. Have a good night. Peace.